Welcome back, everyone, to a narrative of my ongoing book, The Journey for Clarity. Um, about my parents, about my childhood. Hopefully, it gives people a little bit of clarity themselves about maybe problems they've been having in the same ways with absolutely narcissists and just mentally ill parents, family. I just want to help people with this because I've had a lot of setbacks with it through the years, and the only reason I don't have setbacks with it now is because I left all the toxic people in my life, which really weren't that many people, but my mother for sure. My father died last let me see, in 2020, about 3 years ago, so he's not a problem anymore. And he was kind of at the root of it, but I found out my mother really was. My mother was just a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's total narcissism. I'll go ahead and go on with this next paragraph here. Unfortunately, I never had the time in recent years to define good characteristics about myself. I was always a yes man, as you both can certainly attest to. I cannot think of a time in the past when I did not do exactly what either of you asked of me without question, even when I was hurt emotionally as a result, and threw my wife and son under the bus as well. I was the best student I could be in high school. I was not perfect by any means, but successful in my own right. It is apparent to me now that you both took advantage of my submissive nature. You did not offer or accept any relationship boundaries, nor did you respond when I tried to establish said boundaries. These requests were always met with resistance and were repeatedly ignored well into my adult years. I had asked my mother several times in recent past to give me the space that I needed so I could spend time with my family and be more independent as a husband and father. This was something I should have not had to ask anyone. I should have just taken it. It hurt me too bad to hurt you, even if I knew you were being selfish. This request was ignored, and my mother started to put more pressure on me to spend time with her and my father. It seemed impossible for you to leave me alone to live my own life. I once went to my father and told him I had an issue with my mother being too needy, and asked him if we could talk about it. He said in his normal brash and intimidating tone while squinting his eyes at me, "Your mother loves you." So I left it at that, knowing the attempt was futile. He never communicated with me. I do not know why I thought he would then. I always tried through the years to establish a relationship with my father. It was becoming clearer to me every day that I was not being respected, and my parents did not care if I had certain needs above their own personal needs. These instances took place when I was in my early 30s, and similar instances happened to me through my childhood years. To give credit where credit is due, I do not look at my childhood as being this all horrible thing. I had plenty of healthy food, a solid roof over my head, plenty to do, all the toys I wanted, independence, proper schooling, and support for that schooling, and so on. The problems were always with emotional support, love, affection, validity, and the like. So the things that really stick out here is even still I'm going through and trying to prove these things to my parents. It's always that. It's always me confronted with them, standing right there saying, "Hey, I'm a real person. I'm a real boy." But they never would listen. So on paper was really the only reason or the only way that I could kind of feel like I was getting my point across. So throwing my wife and son under the bus, it would just that illustrates how I did it with mom and dad. Mom and dad trumped everything, everything. If they needed something, they got it, and it's not like I wanted to neglect my family, and I did pay attention to my immediate family, my son and my wife, to a great degree, but it took so much off of that. Now, as a parent, I am a parent, and I realize my son has children. You got to give them their space to do what they want to do with their lives, and their children is very important in your relationship with your adult children. So I know that from my first person perspective, and that's what really always confused me about every time I got into a situation with mom and dad, even before I had kids and understood that they'd go, "Well, I love that guy, and I really need to just back off," because they were always messing with me all the time, and they just never would. And then when I became a father, I went, "Wow, that really is kind of a double blow." that they would be that way, because I love my kid and I'd damn near do anything for him within reason. You know what I mean? And I've stood up to my kid before. So, it was a bad situation. I feel my parents could have remedied, maybe while I was a little younger. I certainly take responsibility for it. It's something that I know that I could have fixed. Unfortunately, I would have had to fix this by leaving mom and dad, and that was really the always the thing. The only option I could ever see, because I would throw stuff at them and I go, "Hey, are you going to change or whatever?" And they'd go, "No, piss off." And then I'd think in my head, the only way I'm going to remedy this is leaving. It was just, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be a good son. So just kept going circular for 40 some years or whatever. I wasn't perfect by any means, successful in high school. I was an average student. They did give me, like I said in the closing sentence, the closing paragraph, they did give me all the things that I needed to be successful, for sure. It was kind of weird, double-edged sword, because they gave me everything to be successful, but then when I came home, they beat me down all the time. I was successful in my own right as a parent. To me, now that you both took advantage of my submissive nature, and when I thought about that, when I saw that particular sentence, they are the ones that wanted me to be submissive. It's almost like they trained me that way, and then they took advantage of it. They did all that on purpose. I talk about that as it pertains to manipulation. I remember going to my father and saying that, yeah, that was just the total denial. It used to just drive me nuts to go to dad and say, "Hey, Mom, can you help me out, man?" That was really what I did that time. And he just got, "So your mother loves you," because he had, when things were set up his way, he could go hunting. I mentioned hunting before as all dad wanted to do. If mom was paying attention to me, then she didn't pay attention to dad, and then he could go do his thing. By then, by the time I was older, he's making better money. We weren't poor when I was young at all. We always, had our stuff. When I was real young, I think it was a little bit harder for my parents, but I wouldn't have remembered that because I was like 5. I will go went to the grave saying that I got treated well in that way. They were just fucking mean people. I had always tried to start a relationship with dad, and it just never worked. I just kept beating my head against the wall. I don't know if there's guys that did that, but I was never enough for dad. I'd go back and I'd try to wow him, and he'd just look at me. Dad is like, "You can see I got it right now." It's kind of how I am. It's like the same look. I try not to wield it in a place of from a bad place, but it's just a pretty good rough idea how my parents dealt with me. And then, once again, while talking to them, to give credit where credit is due, I do not look at my child as being a horrible thing. This is what I was telling my parents. Plenty of healthy food, solid roof over my head, plenty to do. All the toys I wanted, validity, love, affection, were where there were problems. It's like two separate worlds. So I find that is like with my wife, let's say. That's something that she dealt with. It could have been. Like with the generation, her parents, we've come up with a whole lot of theories about how it might have something to do with my parents. I'm 48, to give you guys an idea. My wife is 48, and our parents are or were in their 70s. Our mothers are like 75, so that puts them right at the beginning of the baby boomer generation. My grandfathers were in World War II, so baby boomer all day long, and they seem to have been very much neglected. And in their defense, their parent, like my father's parents, were about worthless, man. Of course, that's coming out of my dad's mouth, but you could really tell that they didn't want to have anything to do with me either. Now, on the other hand, my mom's parents were great. So I heard something about my mother that somebody said, "How could you deal with my mother?" One of her sisters or brother or something like that, and referring to how she was hard to get along with, and I think one of her brothers said, "That's just the way that she is." So before I was ever born, there was probably a few issues with this, and it's interesting to uncover. That this writing is everything lately, and everything I've been through has really took me to this place. So there's our next installment there. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back tomorrow with another. Have a wonderful day.